By late July, most gardeners quietly give up. Tools go back in the shed, seed packets get shoved in a drawer, and the whole yard gets mentally filed under done for the year. But that exact moment, the one where everyone else stops, is exactly when a smaller group of gardeners are just getting started. And what they plant right now will taste better than anything they grew all summer. Here's the part almost nobody explains. Cold isn't the enemy of a vegetable garden. For a specific group of plants, cold is the exact thing that makes them worth eating in the first place. When temperatures drop, certain vegetables panic in a very specific way. To keep their cells from freezing solid, they convert stored starch into sugar, essentially flooding themselves with a natural antifreeze. That sugar is the same sugar you taste on your tongue, which means the exact weather most people think ruins a garden is the weather that makes some of it taste better than it ever did in July. Which is exactly why the gardeners who actually understand their season are doing the opposite of everyone else right now. While most people are packing it in, they're planting 6 specific things, in a very specific order, because timing here matters more than almost anything else you'll do all year. Start with the fastest proof there is, radishes. Most people plant radishes in spring and never touch them again, but a radish sown in August grows faster than almost anything else in the garden. Some varieties are ready in as little as 3 to 4 weeks, right as the days start cooling instead of heating up. That cooler air keeps the roots from turning woody and sharp the way a summer radish often does, so what you pull out of the ground in September is crisper and milder than anything you grew in June. It's not the most dramatic vegetable on this list, but it's the fastest evidence that the season isn't over, it's just getting started in a different direction. Which brings us to the vegetables where that same trick gets a lot more interesting, because the sugar doesn't just make them milder, it makes them genuinely, noticeably sweeter, in a way most people assume is impossible from something that grew through frost. Take spinach and lettuce. Sown now, they mature during shortening days and cooling nights instead of the blazing heat of July, which is exactly why a spring lettuce often turns bitter and races to flower while a fall-planted one stays tender for weeks longer. The plant isn't fighting to survive the heat anymore. It's simply growing, slowly, sweetly, with nothing pushing it to rush. But if you want to see this effect at its most extreme, you have to go underground, to the one root vegetable that turns this cooling trick into something close to alchemy. That vegetable is next, and it might be the single best argument for planting anything at all in August. Carrots. If radishes are quick proof and lettuce is a quiet upgrade, carrots are where this entire idea stops sounding like a gardening tip and starts sounding like alchemy. A carrot pulled in August tastes fine. Sweet enough, a little earthy, exactly what you'd expect. But leave that same carrot in the ground through the first hard frost, and something happens that most people never witness because they have already harvested everything by October out of habit. The plant floods its roots with sugar to survive the cold, and the result isn't a slightly sweeter carrot. It's a noticeably different vegetable, sweeter than anything sold in a grocery store, because grocery carrots are pulled and shipped long before frost ever touches them. Which means the carrots you plant right now aren't really for eating in September at all. They're a bet on October, on November, on a cold night doing something to that root that no amount of summer sun ever could. And if carrots are where this idea becomes obvious, kale and Savoy cabbage are where it becomes almost theatrical. Kale planted in August grows through the cooling weeks exactly the way it's built to. It's tough, slightly bitter, perfectly edible, the way most people have always known it. Then the first real frost hits, ice forms directly on the leaf, and within days the same plant tastes almost unrecognizable. Milder, sweeter, the bitterness that made half the country decide they didn't like kale simply gone, converted into sugar by the same defense mechanism, working overtime to keep the plant alive. Savoy cabbage does the same thing. Its crinkled leaves holding onto that sweetness even longer in storage than a flat-leafed variety would. Which is exactly why old root cellars were always packed with it heading into winter, long before anyone had a scientific word for what was actually happening inside those leaves. Which brings up the obvious question, if frost quietly improves 4 different vegetables like this, why does everyone still treat it like the thing that ends a garden instead of the thing that finishes it properly? The answer is timing. Every plant so far still had some room for error, a week early, a week late, a slightly warmer fall, and it mostly forgives you. The next one doesn't. It gives you exactly one narrow window, once a year, and if you miss it, there's no second chance until next August. Beets follow almost the same rule as carrots, sweeter after frost, better in storage, and they'll sit in the ground longer than people expect without turning woody. But beets still forgive you a little. Pull them a week late, and you lose some sweetness, not the entire crop. The last one doesn't work like that at all. Garlic. Everything up to this point has been about sugar, about frost, improving something already in the ground. Garlic is a different kind of trick entirely, and it's the reason gardeners who actually understand their season treat late August like a deadline, not a suggestion. Here's what almost nobody explains. A garlic clove planted now needs a specific stretch of cold weeks while it's still underground, a process that quietly triggers it to split into a full head of cloves instead of staying a single undivided bulb. Miss that cold window, plant too late, and the clove either doesn't get enough chill to divide properly, or it doesn't have enough time to root before the ground freezes solid. Either way, you don't get a smaller harvest. You get almost nothing, a shrunken single clove where a full head should have grown. That's the part that separates garlic from everything else on this list. Radishes, lettuce, carrots, kale, they all have room for error. A late frost, an early one, a week off schedule, and they mostly still work. Garlic gives you one narrow window. Once a year, and there's no version of this where you plant it in October and just get a smaller harvest instead. You get a wasted season, full stop. Which is exactly why the gardeners who know their season aren't casually planting garlic sometime this fall. They're doing it now, this week, because the plant genuinely doesn't care how busy your August was. A few honest questions before you go outside. Is it too late if you're hearing this in early September? For radishes, lettuce, and carrots, usually no. You still have a workable window. For garlic, it depends on your first hard frost date, but sooner is always safer than later. Do these need any special care compared to a spring planting? Less, actually. Cooler air means less watering, fewer pests, and almost no bolting to fight against. What if an early frost hits before anything's ready? For everything except garlic, that frost is doing you a favor, not causing damage. So while most of the yard next door sits empty until spring, 6 plants, timed correctly, are quietly doing their best work of the entire year in soil everyone else already gave up on. So tell me, which one are you planting first this week? And if you've grown garlic before, did you plant it in August, or did you learn the hard way what happens when you wait too long? Drop it in the comments.